Right. So welcome everyone to our Thriving Through COVID-19 session. My name is Braden Lasecki. I am a health promotion specialist at CFB Borden. I've been with the organization for a few years now, and by far, this is the topic that I am most passionate about. I love talking about mental health and stress in our lives and how we can better understand what's going on internally, because it's not always the easiest thing to understand. Let me just mute someone. Sorry. You can ask questions if you want in the chat bar, or you can come on and unmute yourself and we can have a conversation that way if you want as well. But throughout today's session for 30 minutes, quick and dirty, I guess, we'll be talking through about COVID-19 and the effects of COVID-19 that they've had on us, and how to kind of thrive in our new environment, how to adapt, and how to better understand change and what's going on in our world. So in a military environment, we know the importance of not only being physically fit, but also mentally fit. We're putting so much emphasis on being physically fit, but also mentally fit, and it really does go hand in hand. So this is why this webinar was included in Health and Physical Fitness Day this year, because we understand the importance of physical activity. That's why we have Borden's Fittest Soldier and why we're doing reconditioning and yoga. But it's also super important to look at our mental health and really get a grasp of how we can better support our mental health, especially during a time like COVID-19, when there's so much going on in the world, there's so much change. How do we best support ourselves and our loved ones during this time? So we have had to deal with so much change and learn to adapt to this new normal. But with all those changes, we need to continue to adapt and shift. So just because, we might see the light at the end of the tunnel, we're still going to be changing back. So maybe going back into work or, whatever it is, the kids going back to school, we're going to still need to change regularly throughout this environment, our new normal, our new changes that are going to be coming. So really important topic, not only for during COVID, but also how to thrive through the rest of our lives, because we can't avoid change. It's inevitable. So why not learn how to cope with it in a positive way? So before I jump into the content, I would like to let you know that there's a few different contests associated with Health and Physical Fitness Day, as well as PSP Borden. So the one on the screen right now is PSP Borden's summer-long promotional contest. So PSP Borden is kind of running this summer-long contest to win a Traeger barbecue. So I'll throw in the link into the chat bar now, but essentially all you have to do is click that link, fill out the information. I'll let this person in. Fill out the information, and then you'll be eligible to win this barbecue at the end of summer. By participating in more PSP events, you'll have the opportunity to get more ballots for this contest. So really cool initiative we're doing, our contest. Today for Health and Physical Fitness Day, you will receive one ballot for joining all of Health and Physical Fitness Day. So click that link and fill out the information, and then you won't have to for all the other sessions you're planning on joining today. The other kind of contest or information I have to pass along specifically to my event is I will be giving away a $25 KNX gift card at the end of the presentation by random draw. So stick around and you'll be eligible to win that. All right, so today's session will kind of be a short and sweet overview of how we can better adapt during a period of so much change. So, I typically present a day-long, MFSA or stress take charge course, sometimes an hour, but half an hour is pretty quick. So I'll just hit the meat and potatoes of it. So from coping strategies to changing the way we think about change, this session will provide you with the building blocks to thrive during COVID-19. I can't do the change for you. You'll have to take this information and implement it into your own lives and really try and act on that change that you've learned over the next half an hour or so. So with so many changes occurring over the past year and a half, and with so many unknowns still happening, we want to teach you a better way to cope with stress and to cope with the effects of COVID-19 and how to adapt to our new normal living in this moment right now. So I'm going to take you through kind of how our stress levels and how we can navigate negative stress in our lives. I will then discuss some ways to set yourself up for success during times of unknown and look at lifestyle factors and skills that we can kind of change or employ to better understand our stress and better cope with our stress. So we want you to live healthy, happy lives. How do we do that when it comes to stress? And I'll talk about that in a minute. And then lastly, I want to discuss how we can monitor both ourselves and do those check-ins with ourselves, but also monitor those who we love and who are surrounding us. So we know the importance of having that social network and kind of how that's changed over the past year, I guess, year and a half. But we want to make sure that we're both checking in with ourselves and others to make sure that we're all good and thriving in COVID, and what to do if we see signs that we aren't or that someone else is in a little bit of a distress or stressful situation. All right. So it's no secret that COVID-19 has tested our mental health. It's tested our mental well-being in the past year and a half. People are experiencing unprecedented stress levels and feeling anxiety related to COVID-19. And that's, you know what, we're all in this together. It's, we all are feeling the effects. All of our lives have changed from this. And the Canadian Mental Health Association actually found that 40% of Canadians say that their mental health has deteriorated since the pandemic started. So now more than ever, we need to make mental health a priority for not just us, but our loved ones around us. So before we get talking about how we can thrive through COVID and how we can, cope with stress and understand it, first, we need to understand why COVID has had such an impact on our lives. We need to understand what's going on kind of behind the scenes mentally to understand how this has put so much effect on our life. So COVID-19 has looked different for all of us. There's no doubting that. All of our experiences are different. However, it has directly impacted each and every one of us from the way we work. So maybe now we're working from home, to maybe now we're having to take care of our child, teach them online school. Maybe now we're all in lockdown. So every single one of us has had to face new stressors in our life. We've had to adapt to this new change. And these might have been stressors that we've never seen before or never experienced before in our lives. So, I've never had to teach a child from home before, or I've never had to, stay in quarantine before and not be able to go see my mom whenever I want, right? So these are stressors that, we've never had to deal with. And that says a lot in terms of our stress level. So we can't just, we have to adjust to these curveballs, but we don't really know how. So really when we talk about COVID and our ability to adapt, it has a lot to do with our stress, but also our resiliency skills. And I'll touch on those in a minute. But essentially what stress is that imbalance between the demands of a situation and your personal coping resources. So essentially from our lived experiences, from our past, from our upbringing, from the things we've consumed or the social media we've consumed or whatever it is, our education, we've had to kind of create this box of resources for us to help us in stressful situations. So when we perceive something, a situation, so when an event occurs, we can either see it as a stressor or not a stressor, and it's going to be dependent on the individual. So as well, it might be even dependent on how you're feeling that day, how much sleep you've had, is really going to impact how you deal with that stressor and if it's a stressor in your life at all. So for the example I always use here is public speaking. Through my job, I've had to do a lot of public speaking. I've had to kind of learn it. I've had exposure to it. So I'm pretty comfortable with it. However, someone who has never had that experience in their life, they aren't comfortable with it. Maybe they've had a bad or negative experience associated with it. They're going to perceive public speaking in the future as a very stressful event. So it's really up to your own kind of mental filter and your past experiences that are going to influence that stress level in your life. All right. As well, comes down to that perception piece. So it's your perceived ability to cope. So if you have the resources available, then you're likely to cope. If you don't have those resources, or you don't feel like you have those resources available, then you're probably not going to be able to cope, and that stress is going to come on for you. So when we look at stress from a psychological level, stress is very necessary, or was very necessary, when we had to chase down that mountain lion or run away from that mountain lion using the flight, fight, or freeze response. However, through evolution, we've come to kind of respond to that stimuli in the same way. So we're still employing that fight, flight, freeze response that might not always be the most helpful. So, from having to wear multiple hats to dealing with the stress of the unknowns associated with COVID, we're going to have this same response, the same stress response, no matter what. And we can't really influence our body too much. There's a lot going on internally before we even realize what the event is happening in itself. So our body has already made up its mind whether that event is going to cause us stress or not. And what happens if we have stressed too much? Our body actually kind of creates an overexposure to cortisol. And really what that means is, and other stress hormones, but predominantly cortisol, what that means is it's going to put our body at risk. So if we experience stress regularly and too often, we're going to experience things like anxiety, depression, headaches, heart disease, sleep problems, weight gain, memory and concentration impairment. And that's just a few of them. So if we're constantly experiencing stress and not coping with that stress, our body is going to suffer from that. So that's really why it's important to, attend these sessions and get a better understanding of how we can better support our stress levels and our mental health in a positive way. All right, so a few goals of mine when I was making this presentation was really trying to get you to think about how you can set yourself up for success. So there's a few different stressors in our life, obviously, from external stressors such as lockdowns, restrictions, kids being home, lack of socialization. Those are going to be external stressors. And then we also have internal stressors. So things like we're not feeling in control, or we need to have everything perfect all the time when things aren't in our control, or maybe we're just procrastinating. So how do we mitigate those stressors or those internal or external stressors in our life? So we need to look at stress. We also need to understand positive ways to cope with that stress. So we all know negative ways of coping, alcohol, drugs, gambling, gaming, you name it. There's a plethora of negative ways to cope with stress. But when we look at positive ways, we really want to look at managing our stress in a productive way, from lifestyle factors to coping strategies. I'll get into those in a second. But we also need to improve our resiliency skills. I'll also touch on that. Increase our ability to get to that relaxation response. So when our body goes through stress, we're in a stress response. And to kind of get out of that stress response, we need to use something called the relaxation response. And I'll talk about how we do that in a minute. And then lastly, we need to normalize mental health, normalize talking about it, get to know our peers and understand where they're at, and make it a normal part of our everyday routine. So in terms of how we can mitigate our stress or cope with our stress in a positive way. So there's a few different ways we can do that. The first is we really need to hone in on our resiliency skills. Now, resiliency skills are learned. You can continuously learn them. You continuously have to, employ these skills. But really what resiliency means is that ability to recover quickly from difficult events. And I know in a military context, this is absolutely extremely important. even from a mental health perspective. So our ability to kind of spring back after an event has happened. So my example here is always an elastic band. So we want to be as much like that elastic band as possible. And if something bad happens, if we're stretched too thin, we have the skills to have ourselves come back to that normal size band, or in our case, our normal ability to cope with things. The second thing on this list is lifestyle factor. And for the presentation today, I will not get into lifestyle factors too much. But really here, it's really important to look at how you're taking care of yourself. So things like sleep and nutrition and physical activity and coping strategies are all really, really important when we think about our stress levels. We can't take care of ourselves and take care of our stress levels if we're not taking care of our sleep patterns and our nutrition and our physical activity and making all of that a priority. I will not go into kind of the key areas today on all of these things, but just know that there are a ton of resources available through Health Promotion. We have a YouTube channel where we have talked about every single one of these lifestyle factors that you can change in your life right now to better handle stress and handle COVID-19. So highly recommend those if you need more information. The next thing on this list is coping strategies. And coping strategies are really exercising your brain or your mental health through mindfulness, meditation, journaling, finding new ways to relax and feel comfortable, and things like self-care. So we go to the gym to work out. We go to get strong, right? It's a routine that most of us do, or all of us do, and is very important. We need to do the same for our mental health. We need to work out our mental health. We need to make it a priority every single day, and we need to employ these coping strategies. Now, things like mindfulness, journaling, grounding, deep breathing, these things are not meant to solely be used in a stressful state. You want to actually learn them when you're not stressed and practice them daily, like we would go to the gym, part of our everyday routine, so that when we are stressed, we have that resource that I talked about earlier to be able to better handle our stress. So if you are not doing any coping strategies right now, highly recommend adding those into your day-to-day routine, making it a priority. I put as much emphasis on my physical health as I do my mental health. I'm working out. I'm going for my 10K run today for Health and Physical Fitness Day, but I'm also doing mindfulness. I'm also doing my gratitude journal and making that a priority as well. So I highly recommend that. If you're new to coping strategies, you can check out different apps. I use one called Stop, Think, Breathe. I also use one called Gratitude. So there's a plethora of apps out there for you. The last piece of the puzzle here in terms of coping, so in terms of setting ourselves up for success, is really about adapting to change. So with COVID-19, we've had to adapt to so much change. And that's probably where a lot of our stress is coming from because of all this change, and because we've never maybe had to deal with this change before. This is very overwhelming to us, and our brain doesn't have the resources to help us in these situations. So we need to kind of better understand what's going on when we're looking at change in our life. So over the next few slides, I'm actually going to be touching more on how to adapt to change and how to kind of view change in a positive way. So for many of us, we spend a great deal of effort, or a great amount of effort, trying to avoid change, but it's inevitably going to catch up with you. Change is unavoidable in our lives. Whether it's starting a new job, whether it's moving to a different city, ending a relationship, or a global pandemic, I'm going to spend the next few minutes on how we can view change, but how we can also adapt to change and feel energized coming out of change, not burnt out and defeated coming out of change. And that's really important. So before I dig into the steps on how to adapt to change, I need to talk about how we should view change. And that's kind of what's on the slide right now is our personal power grid. And essentially, we in Health Promotion use this personal power grid to assess situations, based on our control level. So this grid essentially enables us to choose what we focus our energy on and what we don't. So you'll notice in the top here, I'll just let that person in, sorry. In the top here, we see what we have control over and what we do not have control over. So what we have control over is things like our thoughts, opinions, our feelings, things like that. What we don't have control over is everything else. So what my thoughts and feelings are, what our friends is, what the government's doing, what's going on in the world right now when lockdown ends, all of these things we don't have control over. So on the side here, it's on the left-hand side, it says you take action or you choose not to take action. So really where we want to spend the bulk of our time is in these dark red areas. So mastery and acceptance. So in mastery, we're choosing to take action on something we have control over. So a good example here is maybe your own mental health or the way you feel about something or your self-care. You absolutely have control over your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions, and you can take action for those. You can do things to better your health. You can do things to, change your thought processes and turn them from negative to positive. You have control over those things. Now, where else we have control is when you don't take action and you have no control. So that's the acceptance phase here in the bottom right-hand corner. Now, this is ideally where we want to be, is these two quadrants. So acceptance is probably the hardest one to come to terms with, especially for someone who loves control like me. But acceptance is absolutely necessary for our mental health. When we look at things like burnout and when we look at things like feeling defeated, we are not spending time in acceptance. So you don't take action because you have no control over a situation. So things like when the lockdown is going to end, we don't have a say in when the lockdown ends, unless you're in high government and, thanks for joining. We, for the most part, don't have control over that situation. So why should we spend our energy and why should we put so much thought into those situations that we have no control over? Instead, we want to move to mastery and have things or think of things that we do have control over. So in the example of lockdown, we don't have control over when the lockdown ends. We do have control over our thoughts, feelings, and opinions about the lockdown, how we can change them, how we can better them, maybe how we can view this time as an opportunity instead of a failure, and really come to terms with what we do have control over. Now, where we don't really want to be and where we're going to feel exhausted is in this hanging on section and the quitting or giving up. So the hanging on, obviously, when you take action and you have no control, that's going to leave you feeling defeated. And then when you don't take action, but you do have control, is that giving up state. So maybe when you know you have control over your health, but you don't do things to action or better your health, that's where you're kind of giving up on yourself. And that's not where we want to be. We want to be in that mastery phase. All right. So when we talk about adapting to change, sorry, there is 1,000,001 screens on my computer right now. I just have to find a spot to move this. So when we are adapting to change, really that first kind of first statement here is evaluate your level of control. So really utilizing that personal power grid, and it's not easy. It's going to take work to use that personal power grid, but really coming to terms with, how do I have control over the situation? Do I not? How do I cope with these changes in a positive way? That's really going to be your first point in adapting to change positively. Next, we have practiced self-care throughout change. So throughout COVID-19, one thing that we need to put emphasis on is self-care. Through all this control versus no control, through changes, we need to kind of take ourselves and take it easy on ourselves, be kind to ourselves and check in and don't push away those hard emotions. And welcome them and think them through and seek support if you need it, and really take that time to better understand your thoughts and feelings and understand that there is help available if you need it. The third step here is check in with your thought patterns. So commonly in a time of change, it's easy for us or our mind to cut corners. It's easy for us to go from 0 to 100 or everything be in black and white, or we always assume the worst. So if we take time to examine our thought patterns and really what's going on, we can better understand and rationalize maybe where we're at and where we need to be. So you might, if you are not sure how to do this, I recommend mindfulness here, but really checking in with your thoughts and really checking in with your feelings about a certain topic, or really coming to terms with it. The mind will play games during times of change with you, but check in with yourself regularly to make sure that you're kind of using that rational thought. You're not doing that black and white thinking that we often fall down that hole of. So making sure you're checking in with your thought patterns. The next one is to be present. In a world where we multitask and we are doing a million things at once, probably doing a full-time job and teaching the kids at home right now, there's a lot going on. So really try and be present in the moment as much as you can. And this is a time where you can utilize things like coping resources like mindfulness or meditation to better understand and to better be in that present moment. When we kind of go in the future and think of the future, we might jump the gun a bit, and we might, think of mistakes that are going to happen or could happen. We might think of what could go wrong. So really try and not overthink the future too much or the past, and really live in the present moment. And you're going to feel a lot better and better to be able to cope with things when you are doing that. And I've found personally that mindfulness has really helped me with that. And then the last piece of the puzzle here is find priorities. So in terms of research, the most resilient people see change as an opportunity rather than a monster of fear. They welcome change as an opportunity. So find your priorities in what's really important to you. With a pandemic, with working from home, there might be shifting priorities, but maybe you're viewing this as an opportunity to spend more time with your family, and you're not viewing it as a negative option right now, right? So find your priorities in your life, find that those goals or that sense of goals, find how to align what's going on in the world right now with your values and with your priorities. And that's really where you're going to see that resiliency come out, and better to be able to cope with stress in your life. And top thing is, above all, prioritize your health in life transitions, meaning you're not afraid to ask for help if you need it. You're reaching out to people. You're making health a priority right now, and that's really, really important in terms of our mental health. So to make mental health a priority, we need to check in with ourselves and others often. So ideally, we want to get to know people when they're in their thriving, and be able to recognize signs of distress if they're going into surviving, struggling, or in crisis mode. So recognize those signs of change in yourself and others, and be able to seek assistance if need be. For seeking assistance, and I'm now at the end of my session here, but for seeking assistance, there are tons of resources available to you as CAF members, or whether it be internal resources or external. So please reach out if you need it. If anyone in your life needs resources, here's a small list, definitely not an exhausted list. So reach out. And know that these resources are available for you. Really, really important. And lastly here, if you do have any questions, or if you need any guidance or understanding on mental health, stress, or anything else, you can email us at boardandhealthpromotion@gmail.com. You can definitely access our webinars from our past, or just gain a better understanding of what we do here at Health Promotion. And to wrap up today's session, I am going to choose a winner for the CanX gift card. So I'll just choose at random here. I'll do the third person down. 1, 2, is Ian Slim. So Ian, if you can email us at bordenhealthpromotion@gmail.com, we will coordinate that prize pickup for you and get that CanX gift card to you as soon as possible. So thank you to everyone who joined today. Thank you for jumping on for this presentation. There are tons of presentations for today. Highly recommend jumping in on a ton of sessions today to get a better understanding of overall health and well-being. And if you do have any questions, please reach out to bordenhealthpromotion@gmail.com. Otherwise, I'll stick around for a few minutes, one or two, and then, yeah. So everyone have a great day. Hopefully you get outside and do your run. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Braden. That was great.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.